Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Good. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى أهل بيت الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين لا سيما بقية الله في الأراضين روحي وأرواح العالمين له الفداء رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. So dear brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. A warm welcome to each and every one of you. Alhamdulillah, Allah has brought us here today, and we're going to be commemorating two momentous festivus occasions. The first, brothers and sisters, is the Mab'ath. So that's the time when Allah chose our prophet to become a prophet. Whenever there is a bi'athah, the prophet undergoes a spiritual metamorphosis. The prophet becomes a different person. He was the best of Allah's creation, but what happens after the bi'athah is something else. There's a spiritual transformation in that prophet, in that Nabi, and he becomes something other than what he was before this. When this took place for our prophet, as he was not only the final messenger, but the best of all messengers, and his book wasn't just the last book, but the greatest of all the books, it's natural that his bi'athah would have been greater than any other bi'athah of any other prophet. So for us, we consider this day an Eid. It's a day to celebrate. And our imams have told us that we're supposed to take advantage of this time. It just passed. There were a'mal. But if you remember, brothers and sisters, and inshallah we'll keep this in mind for the next one, the greatest of the a'mal on the bi'athah, both for the day and the night, was the ziyarah of Amirul Mu'mineen. The connection between bi'athah and wilayah. So that's one of the occasions that we are very excited about. The other one, brothers and sisters, is the anniversary of the revolution. So what happened was that after that internal transformation of Imam Khomeini, how his inner jihad and outward jihad manifested itself was the revolution. What happened was, after 15 years of blood, sweat, and tears by the mu'mineen, then Allah granted them the greatest of the ayyamullah and the modern era. Islam was brought back to life. Everything changed when the revolution happened. And that's not only a day of the Eid for the Iranians, rather for all the Muslims and all the people of conscience in the world. We're very grateful that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has honored us with this. And of course, we offer our congratulations, first and foremost, to our master, the Imam of the time, the last hope of humanity. After that, to his representative, the wali of our time, Imam Khamenei, and of course our Maraja. And then after that, all of the ummah, and as I mentioned earlier, all of the people of conscience. Now everybody's got a chance. And last but not least, our wonderful Hadi family. Inshallah, every one of you, mu'mineen and mu'minat, both of these wonderful occasions, hopefully they will be blessed, and this will not be the last time that you enjoy this occasion. Brothers and sisters, as it was mentioned by our brother, we will be breaking bread together in honor of these wonderful celebrations. So please, everybody, stay. Let's break bread together. And as always, brothers and sisters, if there are new faces, we definitely want to reach out and welcome those new faces who are here with us. Brothers, let me say something, inshallah, the sisters won't pay attention. I hear that perhaps the sisters are doing a better job than us at welcoming new faces. And we can't let the sisters win. So inshallah, brothers, if there's any new brothers, we've got to make sure we welcome them. Inshallah, the sisters weren't paying attention, so we're okay, inshallah. So, brothers and sisters, allow me, because again, we're looking for principles. With Imam Khomeini, it was an inner jihad, and then the external jihad, that allowed for that prophecy of the Ahlul Bayt. Because you see, the revolution had been prophesied in many of the hadith of Ahlul Bayt. I'm going to mention one of them. But it was an inner jihad and an outward jihad that allowed this to come true. One of the many hadith that talks about the revolution is this one. Rajulun min ahli Qom. A man from the people of Qom. Yad'un nas ila al-haq. This individual would call the people and invite the people to the truth. Then comes the role of the mu'mineen. Yajtami'u ma'ahu qawmun. There will be a people, not everybody, a group of people will gather with this godly man. Kazubar al-hadid. They'll be like slabs of iron, these individuals. So, with that blood, sweat, and tears of those believers who recognize the moment this great event happened, and inshallah, we get to experience many more anniversaries of the revolution. Now, brothers and sisters, there is a question. Our brother said something that is very interesting, and it creates a thought in the mind. Why is it that many Muslims will definitely commemorate the Mab'ath? They will have Eid of the Mab'ath. But then an event like this, which is also an Eid for all the Muslims, why is it that something like this, the anniversary of the revolution, might not be commemorated? I want to mention part of the reason. Okay? Part of the reason is that many Muslims have not realized something that the enemies of Islam have. What have the enemies of Islam realized? The enemies of Islam have connected the dots. They see this revolution is a continuation and an extension of that revolution. Those people who are opposed to this revolution are opposed to that Mab'ath. Should we get frustrated? No. Confused, sad, because some of the Muslims haven't made the connection yet? No. That just reminds us of our obligation. Brothers and sisters, we have an obligation to have conversations, to speak to people, to talk to people, to help them connect the dots. People love Rasulullah, they love the Mab'ath, but they don't all know that the continuation of the Mab'ath, the stance that you would take at that time because of the Mab'ath, is why you are supporting the revolution. So, brothers and sisters, there's a beautiful book. I consider it a must read for those people who would like to play an active role in preparing the grounds for the coming of the Imam. Inshallah, I'll talk a little bit more about this on the birthday of the Imam, but just a little part of one line of that dua that lets you and I know how deep do we have to dig, and then why is it that we have to do the clarification jihad. So if you remember the dua that we make, we say that Allahumma kulli waliyik al-hujjat min al-hasan salawatuka alayhi wa ala abai, till we get to the stage that we say that, oh Allah, you place him in the earth taw'a. What does that mean? When you establish the Imam in the earth taw'a, it means our clarification jihad, our explanation, our conversation has to be so much the masses of the people accept him willingly. There was a time before this where the issue of Palestine was such, you couldn't touch it because people considered Israel a sacred cow. Now, the masses have woken up. You see the masses do things that you and I don't do. They're so upset about this. They've been able to connect the dots. They see the oppression. Some of you were in Washington, D.C. In Washington, D.C., where the non-Muslims are gathered, where the Jews are gathered, they were protesting. Some of you were there. They had flags of Abu Ubaidah. They were talking about resistance, non-Muslims. We had two protests here. That's not what, they're disrupting traffic, sitting in front of traffic. They're like, this is wrong. Why? Because it's become clear to them. Now what we have to do is to take them one step further. What's the connection between what's going on in Palestine and the coming of the true Imam? That's the clarification jihad. That's us having conversation. That's us talking to people. But you and I have seen that it works. Unprecedented that we have this kind of support for Palestine. You've seen the poll that they did on the university students in Harvard, and the loaded question that they asked, and the university students, the support they had for Hamas. Every red-blooded American, if they knew what was happening to the Palestinians, they'll be on the side of the resistance. Don't worry about that. Just explain. So now, brothers and sisters, a book that helps us to do our responsibility, right? A must-read for those who want to actively support the Imam is by our leader, and he gave us information on what we're supposed to do. So it's called Tabyin, the Neglected Obligation. This is the missing link. This is how we bridge the gap. Brothers and sisters, inshallah, you will get the book, you'll read it, and you understand what can I practically do for Imam Mahdi so that we end this misery. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. All right, so brothers and sisters, what we're going to do is we're working on developing an Islamic Aqidah. By doing that, we're reading a book called Reclaiming the Narrative. What we do is we go over the verses of the Quran together as a community, so we're learning. And then after that, we're sharing. We have to learn, we have to share. When we go over a section like this, so today's section will be telling us about the psychological effects of Tawheed. What happens in the heart and the mind of a mu'min or mu'mina if they embrace the concept of Tawheed? They really say from the bottom of their heart that Allah is one. La ilaha illallah. What happens in the heart and mind of the believer? That's the chapter. Brothers and sisters are reading the chapter. What is the benefit of you and I going over a book that teaches us our Quranic Aqidah? There are two very apparent benefits. One of the benefits of us learning Islam and the fundamental principles of Islam from the Quran is that if someone presents us wrong Islam, weak Islam, fake Islam, now we have tools. We're able to decipher. We looked at the ayat of the Quran. That's one benefit. The other benefit, which is still part of, so 1A and 1B, you and I have a responsibility to prepare the grounds for the Mahdi, right? Hatta tuskinahu ardaka taw'a. Until you, God, make him come in the earth, but it's willing, it's a mass acceptance. We also have to share these teachings. So the first benefit of reading a book like this, one, we know what true Islam is or isn't. Number two, we know how to share Islam as we're taught by the Quran. That's the first benefit. The second benefit is a personal one. When we read the true definition of these Islamic concepts, what is Iman? Faith, according to Quran. What is Wilaya? What is Nubuwah? What is Tawheed? when we read these definitions and we look at the ayat of the Quran, there's a personal benefit. What's my personal benefit? My personal benefit is that I can look at myself as a believer. Now that I know what the definition of Iman is, now that I know that what the psychological effects of Tawheed are, do I have these traits? Or is this a place where I need to grow? So the second benefit is that instead of fooling myself, claiming to be a muwahid, 100% I'm in the army of the Imam, maybe I'm not. Maybe I have to grow. So the second benefit of reading a book like this, when we're reading to learn, is that we can now compare and we see whether we have or do not have these traits. Brothers and sisters, what I mentioned last time was the idea that this is just one part of that lesson, one of the psychological effects of really believing in Tawheed, that there is only one God. Not just the textbook Aqidah, the Quranic Aqidah. One of the benefits is that the believer, the mu'min or mu'minah, fears no one but God. One of the effects. The other one, inshallah, you'll read about in the book. One of the effects is that if I truly have embraced Tawheed, I believe Allah is one. One of the effects, one of the telltale signs, is that I'm afraid of no one but Allah. The leader in the thing he did mention, it doesn't mean that as a mu'min or mu'minah, I never get stress, I never get anxiety. No, that's different. He explains it further in the book. We'll cover the ayat of the Quran. But that kind of fear that would lead to me choosing what someone else says over what God said. That kind of paralyzing fear that would make me disobey God for His creation if I have truly embraced Tawheed. One of the effects is that fear is no longer there. Brothers and sisters, this lesson in particular, this particular lesson, this particular psychological effect of Tawheed, it's one of the big steps in order to bridge the gap so Imam Mahdi returns. If we collectively could embrace this Quranic lesson and only fear God, that would be a huge step in the coming of the Mahdi. Let me tell you a hadith from our Prophet. So we learn the principle. Our Prophet says this. So question, what happens if I only fear God? Well, you've just made a step for the Imam coming back. Why? The hadith says this. Ma sallatallah ala ibn Adam illa man khafahu ibn Adam. Sunnah of Allah. Allah will not place anyone in authority over the son of Adam, over human beings, illa, except man khafahu ibn Adam. Man khafahu ibn Adam. Except the person we're afraid of. God won't make anyone rule over us except the person we're afraid of. If we're afraid of Genocide Joe, we get Genocide Joe. If we're afraid of Netanyahu, we get Netanyahu. If we're afraid of whoever it is, whatever our Tawheed, whoever we're afraid of, God will make him rule over you. What happens if I only fear Allah though? Hadith. Walau anna ibn Adam. If it was the case that human beings, lam yakhaf illallah, only would fear God. If people would only fear God, what would happen? The hadith says, ma sallatallah alayhi ghayra. God wouldn't put anyone but himself as an authority over that person. If we were to only fear God, Allah would make the Mahdi come back. It's in our hands. I'm saying that to myself. So if we could have that lesson, if we could embrace that collectively, the Imam could be here. Those fears that God says don't have, they're still in the hearts. We have Tawheed. This is one of those big and important lessons that Imam Khomeini used to teach. I'm going to give you a story from Imam Khomeini. May Allah bless his soul and raise him with the Anbiya. One of the big lessons of Imam Khomeini to the masses, to people like you and I, Imam Khomeini had undergone that inner revolution where he only feared God. But he didn't suffice with that. He taught the rest of us, don't fear anybody else, only fear God. If you only fear God, it untaps all of your potential. If you want the good of the dunya, I'm going to mention some of the hadith. If you want the good of the dunya, only fear God. Be brave. If you want the akhirah, only fear God. Dunya, akhirah, iman, politically. If you want to experience God's best, politically. One example. Right now, you and I are watching Israel commit genocide on TV. We're almost in our 5th month. Genocide on television. Killing babies, desecrating cemeteries, every kind of disgusting act that makes the blood boil, they're doing. Right now, this is just that practical, politically, if we wanted to experience God's best. Right now, Israel is surrounded by Muslim countries. There's 1 billion Muslims in this world. Egypt is right next door. Saudi Arabia is a stone throw away. Muslims have political resources. They have human capital. They have oil. Why can't the Muslims stop this genocide? This is a lesson to the Muslim leaders. I was talking about politics, right? The political, if we want to experience God's best in this world. The political leaders of the Muslims, they need to step up. All they need to do, even if they're too weak to fight, all they need to do is stop begging for a ceasefire, stop supporting Israel politically and economically. Do you know which countries, right, and we're not going to mention names, right now are sending fresh, Islamic countries are sending fresh fruits to Israel? The Muslim countries. And they're so scared of Israel. Israel has their number. I'm not asking you to go to war. Stop supporting. Send out their ambassadors back home. Close their embassies. The Muslims too scared. Israel has their number. So if we wanted to politically experience God's best, right? If we wanted anything, it untaps it. I remember a hadith that we learned from our immortal Shaheed, Shaykh Qasim Soleimani. I'm sure you guys have seen the video. There's a hadith of Imam Sadiq, but just because it plays right into this. What happens if I only fear God? Hadith from Imam Sadiq. The hadith says this. Man khaf Allah, whoever fears God, akhaf Allah minhu kulla shay. God will make everything else fear you. Whoever fears only God, God will make everything else fear them. What happens if I'm a coward? If I'm a weakling? Oh, Imam says the other part. وَمَنْ لَمْ يَخِفِ اللَّهِ. The person who's not afraid of Allah. I can defy God. What happens? أَخَافَهُ اللَّهِ مِنْ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ. God will make the person fear everything. The key is in the hands of the believers. Can I tell you guys a story that's not true, inshallah? You didn't? Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. It's a principle that you and I learned from Shaykh Qasim Soleimani. What did he teach us? He taught us that in times of crisis, there is incredible opportunity. The only thing he says you have to do is don't panic in the times of crisis. Don't let anybody else be afraid. There's incredible opportunity. So I want to tell you a story that's not true, inshallah. They said once there was a little dog named Benji. And Benji wandered into a jungle. And a lion saw Benji. And he decided, that looks pretty edible. I'll go over and have me some dog meat. And the lion came rushing towards the dog, but Benji never panicked. He saw the lion bearing down on him, so he thought quickly. He looked over at some bones that were next to him, and in a loud voice, Benji said, that lion meat was excellent. The lion backed up. He said, whoa, that guy's too tough. I better rethink this. And he left. There was a monkey who was watching. And the monkey said, lion, he played you for a fool, man. I know that dog. He thinks he's smart. The lion was so angry. He said, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Get on my back, monkey. We'll go after him. And they went charging after Benji. And Benji saw them charging. And out of the corner of his eye, without saying anything, without looking at them, he said in a loud voice, where is that lazy monkey? I told him to bring me a lion an hour ago. If the person doesn't panic, the person fears God. Later, inshallah, we'll talk a little bit about the healing process. How do I develop bravery? Inshallah, we'll talk about that a little bit later. A story from Imam Khomeini. May Allah bless Imam Khomeini. Right now, you see resistance in Iraq. You see resistance in Yemen. Our Yemeni brothers, I mean, to me, I can't get enough of hearing their statements. You see how in Gaza, the Palestinians are going to break Netanyahu. This is going to be something you witness in your own lives. You see Lebanon, right? Where did this start? Imam Khomeini. I'm going to tell you a story from the beginning of the revolution. This is a story the leader tells. So, and just for context, this is the beginning of the revolution, a few months into the revolution. So, brothers and sisters, you have to remember, Iran, prior to the coming of Imam Khomeini, was being used as the big stick for everybody else. Israel ruled Iran. As a matter of fact, Iran was so zalil, so humiliated. Before Imam Khomeini, America would take planes from the Shah, send them to Vietnam, not even ask the Shah. The Shah wouldn't say no anyway. They wouldn't even ask him. Imam Khomeini came. But Imam Khomeini taught principles. So Iran, which was just had the revolution, believers are just standing on their feet. Few months in, what happened? Some of the brave university students rushed into the U.S. embassy. I was about 4 or 5 at this time. I wasn't alive. I wasn't in Iran. I didn't take the hostages. In America. They rushed into the embassy. When they rushed into the embassy, they found it was a spy den. CIA contractors. Kind of like the embassy in Iraq right now. They go inside there. They arrest these individuals. The weak-minded Iranians, there was a government officials who weren't like Imam Khomeini, weren't hardcore, weak-minded, liberal individuals. Those people, and they're always like this, they started saying, let those guys go. Let them, you must let, this is not okay. International law, let them go. CIA contractors doing dirt in your country, let them go. Imam Khamenei says, at that time, I went with Imam Khomeini, and he mentions 2 of the brothers. I'm not going to mention their names. He says, we went to Imam Khomeini. Imam Khomeini is still in Qom at this time. He hasn't even come to Tehran yet. He's in Qom. We go and we sit, Imam Khomeini sitting. We sit with Imam Khomeini, 2 other brothers, and the leader. One of the other brothers says this. He says, well, Imam, he calls him Agha. Agha, we have a hostage situation and our taklif isn't clear. We're not sure what we should do. Should we keep the hostages or should we let them go? The leader says, Imam Khomeini thought for a second. He looked up and he looked right at those brothers. And he asked one question. Are you afraid of America? The leader said, I didn't let those guys answer. I jumped in. I said, no, we're not afraid. Imam Khomeini said, then keep the hostages. Fear. What would have happened if Iran had cracked? What was the solution? The key, though, fear. Imam Khomeini wasn't afraid. Are you afraid? Are you able to walk through that door? Imam Khomeini taught these kind of lessons. One of the big lessons was never to be afraid. So, brothers and sisters, we're going to go over some ayat of the Quran. Our brother recited some of these ayat of the Quran. But again, you and I, we want to learn these lessons. We want to read the Quran ourselves. We're going to learn about three things, inshallah, today. One of them, what does Islam say about cowardice? Is it good to be a coward in Islam? What does Islam say about cowardice? What does Islam say about fear? What does Islam say about fear-mongering? One time, I'm afraid of Allah's enemies. Another time, I make you afraid of Allah's enemies. Fear-mongering. The brother mentioned it in the ayat. We're going to read these ayat together. So, brothers and sisters, let me tell you a little bit about the story. So, let's turn to the ayat of the Quran first. So, it's going to be 3 of the verses of the Quran. Brothers and sisters, can you see if you can find Surah 3, Ali Imran, Surah 3. And we're going to start with verse number 173, but I want to give you some context before we begin. So Surah 3, let's see if anybody was able to find it. Was anybody able to find Surah 3 and verse number 173? Anybody, brothers and sisters? Yes? Okay. Do you guys see this? Let's just first make sure we have the right ayat. Right? My Quran is the same as your Quran, inshallah. Do you guys have الَّذِينَ قَالَ? Yes? No? Yes? Okay. A little bit of a background. There's a man in this story named Na'im bin Mas'ud. Don't be like Na'im. Na'im bin Mas'ud. What happened? This, they tell us, is referring to a little-known ghazwa of Rasulullah, a little-known battle that the Prophet fought. The ghazwa of Hamra'ul Asad. Context. After the battle of Uhud, when the Muslims didn't do their job, and we almost lost Rasulullah, after that big victory at Badr, where we could have finished them off if we had listened to Rasulullah, we ended up taking prisoners and not listening to Rasulullah. Because we did that, we had Uhud. In Uhud, they came with 3,000 people. We could have still won. The Muslims didn't listen. So the Muslims are now psychologically defeated, right? 70 martyrs. We didn't listen to Rasulullah. Severe wounds. Many of the Muslims are wounded. It's a battle. It's the good old days. Swords, spears. So you're coming back from battle. Amir al-Mu'mineen was so wounded, it took a miracle of the Prophet. Because they said Imam Ali's body was a wound, right? That ferocious fighting, that's how we kept the Prophet alive. So now the believers, imagine how we're feeling having not done our job. The Prophet gets information. Abu Sufyan and the army that was leaving, they're having second thoughts. Allah says to the Prophet, you pursue Abu Sufyan. Finish the job. So the Prophet gathers the believers, but he says, only those who were there in Uhud. I'm not taking anybody else. Only those in Uhud. And the Prophet went and he marched maybe 7 miles out of Medina, Humra al-Asad. Over there, what happened? Abu Sufyan got word that the Prophet has come out and the Prophet's furious. And they told him that the look on the Prophet's face, oh, the Prophet wants to finish this. So Abu Sufyan got scared. They had 3,000 people. They could have come back. They could have tried to handle Medina. When they got word, the Prophet's ready to march again. And he didn't take extra troops. He's waiting out there. At that time, Abu Sufyan told Na'im. These are the ayat of the Quran. We're going to read them together. He told Na'im, we're going to escape. I want you to tell the Muslims, we're coming after them. Abu Sufyan is big and bad. He's going to get you. 3,000 troops. Fear-mongering. Now let's look at the ayat of the Quran together. Brothers and sisters, if you can turn with me, we're going to read, because now inshallah we have the context, let's read the ayat together. So we're going to start with Surah 3 and verse number 173. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Alladhina, those who, qala lahumun nas, the people said to them, Na'im said to them, Inna nas qad jama'u lakum. The people have gathered for you. Abu Sufyan is waiting. He is big and bad. You don't want to poke the bear. Fakhshawhum. Fear them. What did the believers say when they saw the threats of the enemy? Qalu. They said, Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil. We got this. This is okay. Allah's on our side. What happened? فَانْقَلَبُوا بِنِعْمَةٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَفَضْلٍ. They came back, they returned. بِنِعْمَةٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَفَضْلٍ. Blessings from Allah, bounty. لَمْ يَمْسَسْهُمْ سُوءٌ. Evil did not touch them. وَاتَّبَعُوا رِضْوَانَ اللَّهِ. And they followed the pleasure of God. وَاللَّهُ ذُو فَضْلٍ عَظِيمٍ. And Allah is the possessor of great grace. What does God say next about those who are fear-mongers, who scare Muslims, who tell us not to trust God, to fear the might of those enemies? إِنَّمَا ذَلِكُمُ الشَّيْطَانِ. The one who's making you afraid, إِنَّمَا, only, ذَلِكُمُ الشَّيْطَانِ. That is shaitan. Naim is working for Iblis. Those who would make you be afraid and tremble and shake and be scared and snivel. إِنَّمَا ذَلِكُمُ الشَّيْطَانِ. What does shaitan do? يُخَوِّفُ أَوْلِيَاءَهُ. He makes his awliya afraid. Shaitan, his job is what? Make his awliya, not Allah's awliya, not mu'mineen, make his awliya afraid. Shaitan. إِنَّمَا ذَلِكُمُ الشَّيْطَانِ. That is only shaitan. يُخَوِّفُ. He terrifies and terrorizes who? Awliya'ah. So what does the believer do? God says, فَلَا تَخَافُوهُمْ. Don't fear them. وَخَافُونِي. Fear me. إِن كُنْتُم مُؤْمِنِينَ. If you're really a believer, if you're really a muwahhid, one of the psychological effects of being a mu'min in God is you do not have these irrational fears of these Tawheed. The thing is, brothers and sisters, this is also in the book. Cowardice, if Allah reveals to us that I struggle in this area, I am scared of his enemies, what do? First of all, thank Allah that he showed you that this is a problem, and then after that, take those practical steps. What does Hadith say about being afraid? This is from Imam Ali. He says, "Ihdharul jubn." Beware of cowardice. فَإِنَّهُ عَارٌ. It is a source of shame. وَمَنْقَصَةٌ. It is a defect. Cowardice will make us do disgusting things, terrible things. Cowards, brothers and sisters, are savage brutes. If I don't address my fear, shaitan gets a hold of me. I might do something that embarrasses me. The Imam says, it is odd. It makes people do strange things, terrible things, humiliating things. I'll give you an example. Karbala, those people who went over and were burning down the tents, they weren't brave guys. Those guys who were ripping the earrings out of little girls, they're not brave. You know how they went? What happened was, at first, many of the people in Kufa wrote letters. They told the Imam to come. They had a weak governor, but they hadn't cured themselves of the disease of fear. They had a weak governor to the extent that many of them wouldn't attend Salatul Jumu'ah. That was a big deal in those times. They wrote letters and signed the letters to Imam Hussein. That's high treason. Come, Imam Hussein, we're ready. You know how Allah tested them? They didn't address that fear. Nobody thought Ubaydullah was going to rule Kufa. You see, Ubaydullah was a different kind of animal. Ubaydullah, when he went to Basra, there were 80 people when he first went who didn't make bay'ah when he went. Important people, big people. They didn't make bay'ah. They told Ubaydullah, they're like, some of these guys didn't make bay'ah to you. The whole city did. 80 guys, big guys, they didn't make bay'ah. You know what he said? He said, a hand that doesn't need to make bay'ah to Ubaydullah doesn't need to be on the body of its owner. He cut off 80 hands of big guys. Fear. So when he showed up, and remember, this is the biggest political crisis of Yazid's young career. The towering personality of Sayyid al-Shuhada has done qiyam. He said Islam is in danger. He's marching. He's going to take everything down. Everybody's not ready to take on Sayyid al-Shuhada. They go over and get the most savage, most despicable, most brutal person they can find, Ubaydullah. And they didn't like Ubaydullah because he was one of the people who said it was a mistake to put Yazid as the Khalifa. They take Ubaydullah and they send him there. When the people of Kufa find out Ubaydullah is there, that's a different test to the other previous governor. Ubaydullah starts making those threats. He says, no, it's not enough you didn't help Imam Hussein. All of you go to this fort and you're going to all fight Imam Hussein. At first, the people didn't want to fight Imam Hussein. At first, they didn't want to. Ubaydullah threatened them, martial law. I better not see anybody in the streets. Then they said there was one guy who came in from another town. He's not even from Kufa. This poor cat, he came into town when Ubaidullah's goons found him. What are you doing here? I said everybody's supposed to be at the fort. Well, I'm not even from here, I'm from Hamdan. He said, oh, you're not here? He had him decapitated. You can imagine the goons like, why are you killing him? He's not from here. Let the word get out. After that, they filled up the fortress. Then they went and did all those atrocities. They were terrified. Right now, the IDF, they're exhibitionists when it comes to violence. Breaking the arms of 12-year-old children, torturing old people, skinning Palestinians. They're not brave guys. They wear adult diapers. I mean, seriously, like, what army is this? They're getting it handed to them. They're the worst people on earth. But cowards are brutes. Cowards are brutes. Now, we have 1 minute left, so I don't know how much of the healing we'll be able to do. We're going to just talk a little bit about the healing. Just a little bit, 1 minute, inshallah, we'll leave that for another time. How do I become brave? How do I become brave? One part of it, brothers and sisters, is honesty with Allah. To tell Allah, I am afraid. It is scary. Not to put on fronts, no, I'm the toughest guy out there. No, I am afraid. It is scary. I need your help. There's a very beautiful story, there's not time now, that Shaykh Panahian tells about some of the shuhada, 2 of them. He says, we went to a town, we were over there riling everybody up, getting everybody ready for the battlefront, these 2 shuhada. He said, they told me, one of them was like, I'm afraid. But he was honest. It's not easy. He admitted Allah fixed it. Allah fixed it. 2 of the ayat of the Quran that we're not going to get into tell us that one of the biggest mistakes of people is we underestimate God. We serve a very good God. He can fix anything. The condition, will I even tell him, I struggle with this. I need help. We have 12 seconds, so I'm just going to leave you with this. Last point for us to keep in mind. All of God's tests for you are designed with you in mind. God has told the earth, hadith, I'm not going to read it, the Arabic of it. God told the earth, serve the one who serves me. All of the tests in this world are rigged for you to be successful. Allah has everything on you for you to win. The tests are in our favor, in our advantage, but inshallah we'll talk about that at another time. We end with salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.